Ozzie Albies and Marcus Semien. You look at ADP right around the 2-3 turn in a 12-team league. Ozzie Albies, the ADP is 24.2, the number 2 second baseman off the board. He has finished as a top 16 player in each of his last 2 healthy seasons, 2021 and 2023. He hit 280 with career highs in home runs, 33, and RBI, 109. If you're wondering how somebody like Ozzie Albies hits as many home runs as he does, despite the quality of contact, it's because of this pull happy revolution that we're going to talk about a lot today at the second base position. He also took the next step in terms of plate discipline. He lowered his strikeout rate to 16.2%, and that was backed by a career high zone contact rate. Chris, I don't see any reason not to expect 25 to 30 homers, 12 to 15 steals, and gaudy counting stats in Ozzie Albies' age 27 season.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is he's not as safe a bet to hit for batting average as you might think, given how much contact he makes, because he does have to sacrifice, some batting average or more specifically BABIP skills to maximize his power. However, that being said, he did have his best season last year as a left-handed hitter. He's always done a disproportionate amount of his damage against left-handed pitching. Last season, it was much closer to even. And if that is a skill that he can sustain, if he can be, I think his OPS against righties was more in the 800 range last season. If that becomes sustainable, I think it makes Ozzie Albies' whole profile, one, just look a lot better, but also I think it'll probably take out some of the inconsistencies from his profile, especially in terms of batting average. So yeah, he had an 803 OPS against lefties or against righties, 1023 against lefties. And so he crushes lefties, but if he can be pretty good against righties as opposed to just kind of keeping his head above water like he usually is, I think it does make the profile not necessarily much better because we've seen similar seasons, but I think just makes it a little more projectable.
A little bit safer there for Ozzie Albies. I noticed the same thing with the splits for years. I wonder if he would just be better off batting as a right-handed hitter instead of a switch hitter. But look, he made those gains last year. We'll see if it can last. Marcus Semien going around the same range, 24.6 is the ADP, the number 3 second baseman off the board. Over the past 3 seasons, Marcus Semien has finished as a top 25 overall player each year, has missed 1 game during that span. He's 9th in home runs, 2nd in runs scored, 1st in plate appearances. Semien is the volume play in fantasy. 724 plus plate appearances each of the past 3 seasons. He leads off for one of the best lineups in baseball. Like Albies, Semien does not hit the ball hard, but you guessed it, 26 of his 29 home runs went to the pull side. Scott, Semien's getting up there in age. He's 33 years old. And eventually he's not going to be a volume play. But I don't really see anything that says he won't be in 2024. Maybe it just comes out of nowhere, but everything kind of is still intact here for Semien in his age 33 season.
Yeah, I don't see any reason beyond just, well, he's another year older to think Marcus Semien's going to fall off. I kind of have trouble talking about him. I kind of have trouble talking about Semien and Albies both without bringing Jose Altuve into the conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now and just keep this preview moving right along, because Altuve is the one I actually rank the highest of the 3. I think those 3 are a very clear tier of elite second baseman. You got Mookie Betts, the first rounder, kind of doing his own thing, but then you have Altuve, Albies, and Semien as a very clear tier of elite second baseman. And I get why Altuve is going the latest of the 3, because he has an injury history while the other 2 are Ironmen. But of course, most of the time Altuve missed last year was a broken thumb in the World Baseball Classic, and that's not really something you expect to happen again. And just in terms of what they bring to the table, I mean, Altuve is clearly the best source of batting average of the 3. He's probably the best source of power, pretty close with Albies. He's probably the best source of stolen bases, pretty close with Semien. Albies and Semien probably going to have more RBI, but Altuve, batting at the top of the Astros lineup, obviously scores a ton of runs. If we just put it into head-to-head points perspective, because it's easier to kind of sum up a player's overall production that way. Altuve, 3.94 points per game last year. Albies and Semien were both 3.6 something. So on a per game basis, it really showed there. Altuve being better than those other two. Ultimately, this group of second basemen, if they're there in like the middle to late range of round 3, I'm probably taking one of them. I'm taking him over Gunnar Henderson, taking him over Bo Bichette. It's nice. It would be great to get one of those few elite options at the position and not have to worry about what to do at it the rest of the draft. There's a chance I might take one of them early in round 3 too, but sometimes early in round 3 you get like Francisco Lindor still out there, Rafael Devers is still out there, and I can't justify any of the second basemen over them. But if it's mid to late round 3 range, if any of them is there, I'm probably taking them.
They're all kind of the same guy. Like they do different versions of it, but like they're all kind of pulling the same trick, right? Like if you look at expected WOBA, they all kind of look mediocre. None of these guys, Altuve, Semien, Albies, none of these guys looks like a particularly special player, but they all have their swing very well optimized to take advantage of the middling raw power that they all have. Honestly, middling might be generous for all three of them. Certainly Albies from the right side, probably, I would say above average pop, but everyone else, I would say middling or below, but they're well optimized. They've all got good plate discipline. They get on base. They'll steal a handful of bases, but not really be huge standouts there. Although, Altuve's pace last year was closer to like 22 steals because I think he stole 14 in like 110 games or whatever it was. So if you want to give Albies the edge because he's 5 or 6 years younger than the other two guys, I think that's perfectly reasonable. If you want to give Altuve the edge because of the stolen bases, I think that's reasonable as well.
He's batting average more than
batting average as well. If you want to give Semien the edge just because, 4 out of 5 years he's been a top 25 player, even though people keep expecting him not to do it again. I don't think you can really go wrong with any order of them. I have Albies just ahead, just because both Altuve and Semien are in the age range where a sudden drop-off wouldn't be surprising. And, they both might have skill sets that leave them with relatively slim margins for error because of their lacking pop, but I have no tangible concerns about any of them. I do think it's part of the reason why I say that second base is deep, but maybe a little flimsy, is just 3 of the top 4 are 31 or older this year. So but at least 2 of the 3, and honestly, Semien might be playing his way into this conversation. Hall of Famers age differently, and Mookie Betts and Jose Altuve are Hall of Famers. Maybe Jose Altuve doesn't end up getting in for reasons beyond his play, but you should expect those guys to continue aging differently than everyone else.
And it looks like the Astros believe Altuve is a Hall of Famer too, because they just gave him a massive extension, 5 years, $125 million for a guy that turns 34 years old in May. So they still have faith in the player. I have faith in the player. If you factor in at least one IL stint per year, because Altuve has missed time the past couple of years, his 140 game pace over the past 3 years, 294 batting average, 28 homers, 109 runs, 70 RBI, 13 steals. That's a really good player. In a points league, I'm taking Altuve at the top of that group. Roto, I might lean with Ozzie Albies just because he's a little bit younger. I think better all-around production. The RBI, I don't think are going to be very good for Altuve, but I feel better about that for Ozzie Albies. I really like all 4 of these names. I'd be happy to get any of them in the first 3 rounds of drafts.
Batting behind Ronald Acuna is great for your RBI production. And then you're batting ahead of Austin Riley and Matt Olson, which is nice too. To put a bow on what I was saying earlier about where I draft these guys, Altuve, Albies, Semien, mid-late round 3. If it doesn't work out for me to take them there, I'm not drafting a second baseman for a long time.